I'm going to be talking about, well, like compost, climate, and soil, but at the same time, I'm bringing a little message to you that we're working on a project which York Region has funded to develop compost champions for the region, which give training to people so that they could just be champions within their own neighborhoods. It's not a big, onerous thing. But we have a training program that's just about to start up. And if anybody's interested, come and see me at the booth at the end, and we can talk about it. So, I'm going to leave my glasses on. I won't be able to see what's well, before I start, this is a fossil, and there's an archaeologist looking at it. So, I'm just going to throw it to you. At the end, I'll tell you what it is, but you can make your own guesses. I'm not going to ask people to verbalize their guess. Just figure out what do you think it is, and at the end, see whether you're surprised or not. Okay? So, we're here because of climate change. That's the driving thing behind what we're reading over here. And as most of you are probably familiar with, this is the famous hockey stick graph showing how much more atmospheric carbon dioxide there is than there used to be. That line, that dotted line across there goes back 800,000 years, and we're way above anything that's happened in the last 800,000 years. We've just shot right up past it.
Did not there.
Oops, I do something again? I did it, eh?
Sit that down.
That's the other one. Next one out. Next one out.
There you go. How many oncologists does it take to fix it?
I think it's,
Yes.
We're seeing it, but we're not seeing. Seeing on this, but we're not seeing on.
Elizabeth is spinning.
Yeah, Elizabeth, you're up.
All right, so tell us what it was. Well, wait.
Uh,
We got some guesses here. Giant worm, dinosaur turd.
The side shows supposed to be in the power.
What we see on the screen is not what.
I've had this problem before, I don't know. Too many people.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Thank you so much. There, good.
Next again, I was like.
Now I'm gonna watch where I'm standing.
Well, these young folks on our team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the title.
Oh, okay.
So, or the title of a project that we did, the Compost Council, about 2-3 years ago, we partnered with the Soil Conservation Council of Canada. And we got some money from the foundation, and we were able to go across the country and interview all kinds of people that were involved in soil, including soil scientists at universities, people working for government, farmers, even people in the landscaping business and so forth. And what we were looking for, we were trying to come up with a sort of a projection of how much soil could do for climate change. What's the potential for improving our soils and helping with climate change? So we came up with the conclusion that healthy, high carbon soils can tackle Canada's greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. That's our target over there on the left. That's 300 megatons? 300 megatons per year. We want to reduce, Canada has the target of reducing by 300 megatons a year of greenhouse gases. Agriculture's footprint, which is the next bar over, is about 1/4 of that. So about 1/4 of the greenhouse gases Canada breathes each year come from the agricultural sector. Right? That includes animals, by the way. So, what we did is we looked through the literature, we looked at all the science, scientific papers out there, and we did some calculations based on what would happen if everybody that managed soil, from gardeners to landscapers to farmers to big, huge farmers, were to adopt methods of soil conservation and soil health-based methods. And what we found was that our low projection is basically the way we're heading right now. We will make an impact with our soils. Our soils are increasing slightly in carbon in some parts of the country anyway. Our median projection was that 50% of the people who manage soils were to take on these new methods. We could wipe out agriculture's footprint in 10 or 15 years. Offset by adding carbon. So I'm going to talk about the methods, how that happens in a minute. But this gives you an idea of the potential. The high projection was if 2/3 of people did it, and that gets up to about 1/3. But we're not naive about this. It's hard to get people to change their ways of doing things. So to aim for 50% of people to adopt at least some of the regenerative methods of managing soil would be a tough enough ask. But you can see what the potential is. It's amazing. So how do we help our soils to tackle climate change? Because the thing is, soils love carbon, and so do plants. And it all starts with photosynthesis. And for anybody who's already aware of this, I apologize for going back to basics, but I find it really helps with a mixed audience to sort of start from the beginning. So it all starts with photosynthesis. And this is a little complicated diagram, but just bear with me for a minute because it's at the root of everything I'm going to be talking about. When carbon's up in the atmosphere, CO2, I call it resting carbon because it's not reactive with anything. It just floats around there. It's like a blanket, right? And it would stay there, except, for the most part. Now, there's some of it that gets absorbed in the ocean and becomes calcium carbonate, but that's a very slow, long process. On a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year, decade-to-decade basis, it mostly sits up there, except for photosynthesis, which is the process, amazing process developed millions of years ago, by which plants are able to take that carbon dioxide, break the carbon and the oxygen apart, and produce biological carbon, sugars. So that's the living carbon, that's the above ground stuff. So we can think of these things in terms of pools. That's the way climate change scientists think of it. There's a pool in the atmosphere of carbon, there's a pool in the biology, in the living things. And then if you move from that pink oval down to the next one, that's soil carbon, that's below ground, that's when things die. Or waste, leaves, and that's your garden, and all that stuff. But because carbon is in the soil, right? So the carbon below ground is actually the amount of carbon. I don't have this on here as a graph, but I do put it on sometimes. The amount of carbon in the soil is as big as the atmosphere and living carbon combined. It's huge because it's been building for millions and millions of years. The problem is that in our agriculture, we've been releasing it back. We've lost about half of the carbon that was originally in the soils. They come in and take your plow and you put all the oxygen in and the organisms go crazy and you burn off all the carbon. So when that photosynthesis happens and that living biological carbon is created, living things breathe carbon dioxide. We burn it. That's what we do. We burn it. So the CO2, that arrow going up from that living carbon, that's the carbon dioxide going back. It just cycles around and cycles around. We photosynthesize. We eat our veggie burger. We burn off. We use it for energy, and we burn off carbon dioxide, and off it goes back in. Some of it, of course, ends up in waste, which goes into the soil. But the organisms in the soil also live like we do. So their CO2 goes back up there too. The real trick in all this, where I say big opportunity, is in the savings account of carbon. If we manage the soil right, not all of it, I did it again.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Anything that can help me stop being abstracted is a good thing. Okay, so the big opportunity is to add to the carbon that's in the soil rather than to take away from it. Most of the methods of agriculture that have been developed over the last few hundred, well, actually since the ice age, we treated the last ice age, have been based around disturbing the soil, tilling it, adding chemicals to it, doing all kinds of things to it that make it, that prevent it from holding carbon. So it's lost a lot of carbon. That's a big opportunity. Now the last thing over there, the white oval that you see, I call it sleeping carbon because that's the fossil fuels. That's organic matter that's been around so long, it's been under the pressure and everything's been forced into being coal and oil, that sort of stuff. And the big problem is we're burning all that stuff. And so we're putting more carbon into the cycle. And if there's more carbon in the cycle, even though it's cycling in and out, you end up with more on average in the atmosphere, and that's what's going on in the planet. So there's a problem and there's an opportunity. So I want to talk about the opportunity. So there's three partners in soil management for climate change. I like to think of as three partners in a very general sense. There's farmers, of course. There's land managers, whether it's your local municipality managing a park, it's golf courses, it's your own lawn. And there's gardeners. So if all three work together, we have an opportunity, a really big opportunity to make a significant impact. But, as I said, we could completely offset agriculture's greenhouse gas footprint if we did this right, if enough of us got into it and did it right. So it's a great opportunity. So starting back from scratch on soil, how does soil do this? I want to differentiate between regolith and soil. So regolith is what scientists call the stuff that's on Mars. That's a picture of Mars right there, on the moon. And what it is, it's just minerals. It's the minerals. So, like freezing and thawing and all that kind of stuff breaks, they rock up and we get kind of sandy mineral stuff. That's all there is there. Now the picture on the right is a healthy soil. And the difference is organic matter. Right? There's no organic matter in other stuff because there's no living things to put organic matter in. Ours has organic matter on our planet. And the more we have, the more different we are, the better the quality is compared to regolith. But don't think the regolith isn't there. This soil is full of minerals. Right? It's just all the organic matter makes it a totally different thing. So that's just minerals created by physical forces, where our soils are mineral particles, same thing, same as there, but also organic matter and also soil organisms, microbes, worms, etc. So what is a healthy soil? It's one that hosts a thriving soil food web. Soil food web is just a term that scientists use for the organisms that live in the soil and the relationships between them. So it's like our community, there's a community below our feet when we walk in the soil. That's the soil food web. And thriving means that the soil organisms are plentiful, they're diverse, and they're active. There's three things. There's got to be a lot of them, they have to have a lot of variety, and they have to be busy and active in a healthy soil. So, whoops, back up. I don't know I'm not going to show this because I'm not going to have time. But I have it on my computer at the back, so if you want to see the organisms in action, I have a 4-minute video which I repeat and show at the back. You see all the different soil organisms.
Cool.
This as well, it's not coming up here because I don't have 4 minutes. So, I want to talk about good soil structure because that's, we've had Debbie mentioned this a little bit, having big, holding more water, all the things she was talking about for better soil structure. So soil structure means that the soil is crumbly and well aggregated. And this picture comes from a farm where a friend of mine has been advising the farmer for a few years. She got him into doing soil health practices on one part of his farm as a test. This was after 2 years. The one on the right is the rest of his farm. And the one on the left is where he's been practicing the soil health for 2 years. You see the difference? Yeah, it's amazing. And it can happen fairly quickly. It's crumbly texture and it's macro aggregates. That's the key word. Those little pea-like things that are in there, those little clumps that are in there, the aggregates. This is the key. And what you see here is an aggregate blown up to 400 or 500 times. And you see all the little particles of minerals and organic matter. But what's holding it all together? You know what's holding this together? A combination of root hairs, but in this case, this is the root hairs. Root hairs are often good at doing that. These are fungal strands. And it's fungi in the soil that give you your structure. If you don't have any fungi in your soil, you don't have any structure. Period. Nothing to speak of anyway. So this is, I love this picture. It just really shows how you get aggregates in your soil. The aggregates are important. We're going to talk about that now if I can. The next one. So soil fungi are essential for good soil aggregation because they make aggregates. And aggregates are the foundation of healthy soils. And the key to recruiting soils at that climate change, because soil sets up those carbon savings accounts I was talking about, the extra carbon it happens inside the aggregates. You don't have aggregates, it's not happening. It happens inside, it's like a little engine. Inside of the organism, they're busy pulling the carbon that's not necessarily needed. They have enough. Then they're turning it into forms that are more recalcitrant, that last longer, stay longer. And will keep being the soil as a sort of a extra fertility that they can draw on in the future, but also it's building the carbon levels up in the soil. Now, every carbon atom that's in the soil is not in the atmosphere. So, and these aggregates also provide the structure for all the other soil functions. So the benefits of good aggregation, better infiltration of rainfall, because the aggregates create pore spaces. They don't fit together perfectly, the spaces in between, the water can run in and stay there. Better water retention, they stay there. Those pore spaces hold on to air and water, which is what your organisms and your plant roots need to be healthy. It's a better environment for the soil organisms themselves. They create these aggregates as a way of building their community, because they need oxygen and they need water, as well as living space. And it's a better environment for roots, because the roots are better able to penetrate the soil and increase their range. And finally, we've got the higher levels of carbon sequestration, because the aggregates are the sequestration engines. And so if we want to fight climate change with soil, we have to build aggregates in soil. Very simple. Simple to say, not that simple to do, because it involves sometimes changing the way you think about things and the way you do things. So, what is compost? I do most of my work for the Compost Council. I'm retired, but I work as much as I ever did as a consultant. Most of it I do with the Compost Council, but I do with some other people as well. And most of what I promote is composting and worm composting and things like that. So, composting. So fungi, as I said, are instrumental in the formation of the stable soil aggregates. If you want to have aggregates, you have to have fungi. And these soil aggregates, as I said, are the engine rooms for sequestering carbon. So if we want to fight climate change, we need aggregates. Compost feeds, supports, and increases the diversity of fungal populations. Incredibly almost everything. So you put your compost in your garden, you're going to build your fungal population, you're going to have better aggregation, you're going to have better water infiltration, better water holding capacity, and you're going to be fighting climate change all at the same time. So here's, I'm going to do this very quickly, because this is just a summary of a couple of studies that we've done, one in California and one right here in Ontario, that showed the amount of carbon that adding compost can sequester in soils. And here's the really wonderful thing about compost. You put it on once, and the soil starts to sequester more carbon than it did before, that can last for 10 years or more. You don't have to add it every year, right? So these two studies, the one done in Marin County in California, they added 70 tons per hectare of compost. That's a lot of compost. It says the duration of the study was 3 years, it was, but it's almost 10 years now since they did the study, and it's still sequestering carbon. And the annual increase in soil organic carbon in tons per hectare per year in California was 1 ton. 1 ton of organic carbon, of carbon that was in the atmosphere, is pulled into each hectare each year as a result of that one application of compost. Now, the study in Ontario got similar results. They used a whole bunch of different types of compost, but again, it was for a 10-year period. And you see over on the right, the one that actually sequestered the least, and I don't know why, was food waste compost, but at 75 tons per hectare. But the higher applications, as well as the yard waste compost, and the last one is poultry manure, they all sequestered at very high rates. So we have the proof. We know it works. There's lots of other studies. Well, I just picked these two because they're particularly easy to talk about. So compost by itself, whether it's in your lawn, your garden, it's on a farm, whatever, is not enough. All it will do, if you're continuing to plow, if you're continuing to turn your soil, if you're continuing to leave it uncovered and all that kind of stuff, it's just going to sort of help to offset some of your losses. For instance, Western Canada, which stopped, where most of the farmers, not all of them, but a good proportion, stopped tilling a few decades. Their carbon levels on average are going up. In Ontario, where mostly we still do a lot of tillage, although it's starting to change now, Ontario and Quebec, carbon levels have been going down. So just the soil disturbance itself is really important. But we've seen from studies that when you add compost to these beneficial practices, like stopping killing, you get tremendous results. So we promote something called the 6 C's, Compost Council, and it's for managing your soil and garden. And there's a professor at the University of Guelph who came up with the idea, but we, with her permission, and adopted it and adapted it a little bit for gardeners. Right? So the 6 C's are control compaction, so don't walk over your soil. Stop, pushing it down whenever you can in various ways, like some of the things Debbie was showing about having raised beds and then pathways around. That's good because you're not walking on the beds themselves, right? Cultivate carefully. Don't dig a lot. I know you have to make a hole to put a new plant in. You have to make little holes to put seeds in. But the old idea of turning your soil over every year is not good. And I did it for years and years and years. Every spring, turning it over, and destroying all those fungal pathways. All the fungal threads in it, bam, they're gone. They got to regrow. Takes a good long time. I've lost all that benefit. So cultivate carefully. Keep continuous living plants as much as you can. So don't leave it bare over the wintertime. Leave your plants in, even the roots will continue to put exudates up to feed your organisms in the soil if you do that. And if you want to try an experiment, pull a root after sitting all winter and the plant's died, or you cut it off. You cut the plant off if you want to pull it. That's it. Leave the roots. Because if you pull that root out in the spring, you'll find earthworms all over the place around the root. Because those roots are still breaking down and giving off these things that earthworms like and that the microbes like. Right? So, cover the soil. Keep it covered. You want it to stay nice and moist. You want the organisms to have a healthy, happy home in there. You don't want them to get too cold, too hot, too dry. So, cover the soil. Mulches are great for that. Mulches are mulch. Practice crop diversity. Have lots of different things in your garden, because if you do, not only you get insect diversity, you get all the other things that you want in your garden for all kinds of other benefits. And finally, compost. So that's our 6 C's that we promote. And so, as I said, and this is just to remind you that if you're interested in taking our courses, what they are will be is a bunch of webinar courses, information I have at the back. We have a bunch of webinars over December and January on these, going into some of these topics in much more depth, right? An hour-long webinar, so you can do it in my home. And then we're also going to have a series of workshops that you can make or not make depending on your availability, where we're going to do something called the Soil Safari, which is a little program that we do to take people around to different stations to teach them about soil. So our champions are going to learn how to do that so they can do it in their own communities, with kids or with adults. And we have different stations to go to that talk about the physical nature of soil, how soil organic matter is formed, the organisms that are in the soil, etc. The relation to climate, all the way around to it. But beginning again, they've done the circle, and they know a lot more about soil than they did when they started something. It's a soil safari. All right, I think I'm almost done. Oh yeah, there's the soil safari. That's stuff we've done with kids. We've run this program in a number of places around the country, and it's we're still refining it though. It takes a while to get to know what really gets people and what doesn't. But I think we're getting there.
Yes.
Okay. Now you're going to find out what those things were.
Compost
fossils
down
were
there, info at
Prototaxite, a fungus, common about 350 million years ago. At that time, there were no trees. This is what the science tells us. These giant fungi were the big things on the landscape. And why is that important? Well, about 450 million years ago, plants and fungi came out of the oceans at around the same time. And you have to think about it this way, because at that time, on our planet, right here, all the dry land was like regolith. It was like the moon, Mars. No organic matter, nothing growing. All the life was in the ocean. It was single cell life forming around in the ocean, getting most of its nutrients from absorbing from the minerals that were there from the water running off the it absorbed things coming off the land and going to the ocean. There was lots of minerals dissolved, so they could get, and they got their energy from that too. It wasn't a lot. And then magic, some kind of divine intervention, who knows, whatever you want, photosynthesis happens, right? And some little organisms learn how to convert that energy from the sun into biological energy. Wow, that's a breakthrough. Now you start, I'm sort of anthropomorphizing a little bit here. You've got these little organisms looking up at the land and saying, oh, well, there's sun up there. If only I could go out there. But where am I going to get my nutrients? I can get my energy. Where do I get my nutrients? And fungi floating around the thing. I'm good at that. So they came out together, and the fungi break down the minerals, get the nutrients available, and the symbiotic relationship with the plant gets the energy, feeds us energy to the fungi. That basic process is still at the heart of everything that lives on the planet. And we don't respect it enough. We do everything we can to destroy fungi all the time. So,
I love mushrooms.
yeah, what?
I love mushrooms.
Yes, mushrooms. And there's so many different companies. Most of fungi lives underground, as you're probably all aware. The mushroom that comes up is the fruiting body, right? But it's those threads underneath. And people, scientists have been working on this for the last couple of decades, are just coming up with amazing things about what all those fungal. It's the wood wide web. There's messaging going on between the plants, trees, and so forth. But the key thing for us, if we're going to fight climate change, is we've got to work with our fungal partners. They could be perhaps the biggest help that we can have, because as you build that, the levels of these beneficial fungi have in soils, more and more better aggregation, better sequestration of carbon. And as a matter of fact, one scientist told me, he said, if you look back at the fossil record, other records, he said there was a period of time when it was very, very hot. This was after life was out and it was very, very hot. And that's why we have dinosaur relics or remains up in the Arctic and stuff like that. And it was very hot. And then there was a gradual reduction in the temperature and the average temperature. And it coincided with the evolution and development of grazing animals. Those grazing animals are the ones that turn all that vegetation into manure, which then in soils, compost in place of the soil, and built the organic matter in the soil. And the huge, huge layers of organic matter we have in the prairies are the result of those grazing animals moving around the tree. So, you know about that. It's a matter of how we manage it. That's the issue. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.